Welcome, friends. How you doing? Hope you're doing well wherever you are at. My name is David Griscom, and you are listening to Left Reckoning. Griscom Stream Special Edition, Failed Coup Edition. Very happy to be here. Welcome, everybody. These are a little bit different than the main show, and we haven't been doing them as much, so I'm very sorry for that. They're a little bit more casual. I take questions from the chat, so feel free to get those going. And we also usually do those on Thursday, not Wednesday night. The reason why is because of this news out of Bolivia, where there was an attempted coup this afternoon that, as of sitting here, 7:30, seems to have been stopped. And there's a lot of things we can sort of get into, and we have some pretty striking video and images from the event itself. But I just wanted to set the stage, as people know who've been watching this program, have been watching us since the old Michael Brooks show days. Bolivia is a country that has faced significant attempts to deny the people there the right to choose their own leaders. And most famously was the 2019 coup against Evo Morales. Evo Morales, then the president, later of MAS, won an election fair and square. But then some people started questioning the quick count as the results were coming in, implying that because some of the numbers were slow to be reporting, that fraud must be underway. A lot of really smart and engaged people have spent years now debunking that entire narrative, and the facts are absolutely clear. There was zero fraud, or if anything, nothing that was significant or out of the ordinary for any kind of mass election that happens. Right, mistakes are made, people do weird shit. There was no systemic attempt in Bolivia to sway the election by MAS. To ensure that Evo Morales won, because he won very clearly by a majority. Now, that didn't stop the right wing from utilizing this as an opportunity to overthrow the popular left wing government there. Evo Morales had to flee the country. A ridiculously right wing, nasty movement comes into power, and they purged the government buildings of satanic Indian rituals. I mean, Janine Anez was an absolute fanatic. I don't have Matt here or somebody to help me pull things up as we're going, but there's that photo of her holding up the massive Bible. Oh, we're bringing God back into the government. Now, that didn't, of course, stop guys like David Pakman, supposedly a big believer in liberal democracy, and not and a believer in a separation of church and state, from scolding the left for not being serious enough when people on the left started saying, "Hey, I think it's a bad thing that the right wing is cooking up a fake reason to overthrow a popularly elected government so that they can take power, harass, kill." And try to break the power of the indigenous and the working class movement that had brought Evo Morales to power in the first place. Now, I know this is all preamble because there's a lot of very exciting stuff that happened, but I think it's a really important context to remember here, particularly for any new listeners or folks out there. But the events today were quite shocking, and there's some really interesting stuff here that hasn't, I think, been seen enough yet. So let's just sort of take us through the events of the day, and then I'll sort of open it up to my thoughts, and then open it up to questions from y'all. As always, I try to get to as many as possible. We're going to go through a bunch of clips here at the beginning. So I probably won't only be able to get to super chats or things like that make it easy for me to see. But once we get through all of that, I'll be very happy to hear from y'all. And also, as a side note, we'll see how long this takes. We can also maybe talk about the Bowman loss last night, if people have any questions or thoughts about that later. But let's get us started, because as I and many of you first started seeing some of these reports of what was appearing to be a coup attempt in Bolivia um, earlier today. And this is from Cashwan News in Bolivia. Great source here. This is from earlier today. And as you can see, these are soldiers marching through the street. We later get armored vehicles and an attempt to surround the presidential palace in Bolivia. But as all this is going on, people are starting to realize, that something is seriously wrong. This was a strange mobilization of forces in the capital city of Bolivia, and a lot of people were recording and were, sounding the alarm very, very, very early. I think that's enough there about what's going on, and we'll get into the kind of international response because it was very significant. But yes, so people start to see these worrying signs that something is afoot, something is going on, and it got to
Vemos cómo
this.
intenta la tanqueta.
And also, I have to apologize to y'all about some of the tech stuff. Our software updated and created a whole new system that is, in my opinion, horrible. So, side note, apologies. Might be a little rough some of these transitions here, but let me make this a little larger for y'all. This here is the presidential palace, and that's an armored vehicle. Yes.
Está golpeando la puerta de ingreso de
Yes,
Palacio Quemado.
breaking down
Está
the
tratando
door
de
of the
ingresar con
presidential
fuerza,
palace
amenazando la seguridad, inclusive la integridad de
with
la
the
Policía
intent
Nacional y del
to
Colorado
confront the
de Bolivia,
elected
que se
government.
constituyen en la Guardia Oficial de Palacio Quemado. Así la tanqueta ha golpeado, ustedes lo han visto a través de las pantallas de Telesur, la puerta de ingreso de Palacio Quemado. Por esa puerta, señores televidentes, ingresa el presidente de Bolivia. Están ingresando, ahí lo...
So at this point, I mean, it started to look and feel as if, what was coming was something that we had seen before, which was a coup of the elected leadership. And we'll get into the presidential contest and all that kind of stuff in a second. But it was looking and feeling very much like this attempted coup. This, was not just going to be a coup attempt, but an actual coup. And I know this is super grainy. Let me just try and share my screen here with y'all because I think this is a very powerful photograph. I'll zoom in a little bit if I can. I know it's going to be extra grainy, but this was the photo that we got here. And, Twitter's got that good technology that helps us out so much. We love our new boss over there. If you can see in this photograph, that is President Arce facing down the general who's the leader of this coup, General Juan Jose Zuniga. And if you can see that well enough there, Arya doesn't flinch. And in that moment, ordered him to stand down and return the soldiers to the barracks. The immediate response was that they did not return to the barracks. And there was a lot of questions about what was happening inside of the presidential palace at that point. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating and inspiring because one of the things that's so notable about Bolivia, the reason it means so much to socialists around the world, is the fact that the social organizations in Bolivia are extremely strong. That doesn't mean that things are perfect there. Don't get me wrong. But this is a country that has social organizations that can do things that you don't see in the United States, for example, or in a lot of other countries. We are seeing this moment, right, where it is feeling like things are dire. It is feeling like a coup is imminent. It is feeling like the civilian elected government is going to be overthrown and another right-wing, potentially military dictatorship is about to come into power. And then we start seeing these kind of videos.
Está bien que los toqueteros no están solo, puta fachos de mierda. Lucho no está solo, carajo. Lucho no está solo. Lucho no está solo, carajo. Lucho no está solo, carajo.
is exactly what it looks like. The military members there who were there trying to enact a coup, chasing off the military members um, behind it. And we then see these. And I'm sorry if these videos are loud. I truly apologize. We're going to get a new system. They really messed up here. But this is them fleeing. And basically, the people heeded the request from folks like Evo Morales, from folks like President Arce, to take to the streets and to defend the democracy of Bolivia. And the people overwhelmingly did. You always love it when it's the cops and the soldiers running and not the other way around. So, a truly tremendous and fascinating moment. But now, sort of what was going on, what's happening, because we don't know if we're out of the woods yet. We'd love to maybe get a guest on, get a little bit more in depth here. I'm just doing this stream casually with y'all. Happy to take questions, happy to hear any reports or thoughts that people have in the audience. But there's a few things that I think are really notable here that we do know at this moment. Is that since this has happened, I know we have more video here, but just pulling people back into the timeline where we sit right now. General Juan Jose Zuniga attempts this coup, breaks into the presidential palace, refuses to leave, claims that there is going to be a new cabinet by the end of the day in Bolivia. Arce orders him to leave. He does not. Arce fires Zuniga when he's not present and instills an entire new military leadership. I think we have a photo or video of them. Let's see. A lot of people have been doing really, really great work covering this. Let me see. Is it video that we have here? And I'll get to you in a second, my friend. Anyway, sorry, I don't have the photo here, but we do have. Let's see if I have it here, maybe. But yeah, Arce has sworn in. Here we go from former Left Reckoning guest and good friend of the program, Jose Luis. Damn it, y'all can't see. But here we go. Right here this is Arce swearing in a new set of military leadership after this failed coup attempt. Zuniga has also been arrested by authorities. I believe this is via the AP. And he has been taken away, though it's not clear exactly where he's gone. It's also not clear what charges are being leveled against him. I mean, it's very clear as to what he did. Now, what was the plan here? Because it looked very, very serious. Obviously, any kind of attempt like this is absolutely serious. But when he was breaking in to the presidential palace, he was saying that he was there to restore democracy and to free our political prisoners. So again, it's not clear if he was sort of operating by himself, if he was operating under the orders of somebody else. And very interesting wrinkle here that we'll get to in just a minute. Or if he was part of maybe a larger movement, but he was demanding that the people who have been facing the consequences, the criminal consequences of their overthrowing of Bolivian democracy back in the previous coup, who are now facing consequences, he was talking about freeing them there. So a very, very odd situation. We also had a very, very fascinating, and we'll get into Evo Morales and Arce in just a second, but this is one thing that people have not been talking about enough, and this is the kind of interesting news that's come out, is when he's getting arrested. There's video of him talking, and he says, quote, this is the Associated Press, right? But this is a quote from him. Make sure we're getting the right one. This is from the general. This is from Zuniga, who's behind this coup attempt today. Let me get this one. Sorry, I guess y'all probably can't read that, but if you can, hold on one second. He makes a claim here that is very shocking, and I'm not sure if this is just the kind of thing that you say when you're in trouble. Shortly before his arrest, Zuniga claimed that Arke asked him to storm the palace in a political move. The president told me, "quote The situation is very screwed up, very critical. It is necessary to prepare something to raise my popularity." Um, Zuniga said he asked Arke if he should take out, quote, the armored vehicles, and Arke said, take them out. Now, this is absolutely inflammatory. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm going to take this guy's word for anything. Um, that's a truly, truly bizarre and seems like a kind of desperate attempt at trying to save face or something like that, right? Because we're getting multiple different positions throughout the day. But I haven't seen too many people reacting to that story in the AP yet. And it's a very, very wild and kind of strange thing to sort of throw out there at the end. And I think, without being able to do any more investigation than that, and this is just breaking about 45 minutes ago, I don't know if I want to speculate much more on that, other than that's very, very inflammatory and a very, very wild thing to be saying. We'll obviously be keeping everybody up with all of this. Now, there's a lot that we can sort of talk about, and I want to open it up to questions here um, on this. And I know we already have a super chat, and I'll try my very best to get to whatever I can in the time that we have here. I do want to just sort of give people another kind of wrinkle and important aspect to understand what's going on. Is one, you had almost immediate condemnation of this attack from both um, the people you would expect, Nicolas Maduro, left wing leaders all across the continent, saying, the Bolivian people should stand with democracy and condemning the coup. But you also saw condemnation from Janine Anez, who people will remember is the Bible lady and the beneficiary of the previous coup. That some folks in near us, like Pac-Man, thought was a good thing. She said this was a coup and that it was a disgrace and should be opposed. So it was a very, very kind of interesting thing. It was met with immediate condemnation from both the right and the left, certainly domestically, but also internationally. Um, you saw this incredible mobilization of people in the streets, which again is significant, showing the kind of mobilization that exists in Bolivia to defend popular democracy. People remembering the lessons that this shit's not going to happen again. And then adding in this other kind of fundamental realities that Bolivia is engulfed in a very difficult economic crisis, particularly when it comes to the supply of dollars in the country. There's a lot of struggle to try to exchange the currency for the United States dollar. That has meant that a lot of imports, particularly things like gasoline, are extremely expensive, which has been hitting and hurting a lot of everyday Bolivians. And there's been a conflict for the soul, for the political continuity of MAS, the movement towards socialism in Bolivia, which both Evo Morales and Arce have been presidents as members of that party before. And both Morales and Arce are setting up to run against one another in the Bolivian elections. And it has been quite a conflict, as Arce effectively has control of the state, or, to a certain extent. Obviously, we just watched a coup today, while Morales very much has a significant influence and control of the party, of the unions, and of many of the social movements. There has been a very significant fight as Bolivia is dealing with this economic crisis. Bolivian lawmakers are not, associated with MAS are not going to, allow Arce to let foreign companies come in and extract the lithium in Bolivia. There is a kind of fundamental crisis going on within the left party in Bolivia as Evo Morales and Norque, set up for this kind of conflict. So that's an important bit of context for folks to understand. But as we're sitting here right now, the story that we know is that there was an attempted coup in Bolivia. It was repelled by the people of Bolivia, and at least as far as we know, the general Juan Jose Zuniga is in custody. Now we don't know if he acted alone. We don't know who else was involved. There's a lot of theories floating around, right? Because it could be one of those things. You do a coup and you hope the other people do what they said they would, and maybe they sort of left him hanging once they saw the kind of popular and public response against it. It could have been that he was sort of acting as a chaos agent to create some sort of crisis. Um, it's just hard to know with the limited information that we have here right now, and as this is going on. And then obviously the very, very odd allegation that he made um, as he was getting arrested, which remember, that's very important context here. And people say a lot of things. But that's where we're at with the situation. And, very happy to be sitting here and happy to be able to say that the military has not taken over the government in Bolivia. Um, it's very inspiring to see the way that these social movements are still willing to mobilize and the speed and tenacity and courage that exists. But a lot of strange and worrying things happening. So I'll open up to questions from folks in the chat. Please throw those in there. We really, really do appreciate super chats. They help us keep the program going. If not, please at least at Left Reckoning so it's easier for me to see, because there's a lot of folks in the chat and it's almost impossible for me to be able to keep up with that if you're not putting at Left Reckoning or at David Griscom or something like that. First up, we got a super chat here from Gringote. He says, where does the military's equipment come from? I'm not sure where they get their military equipment from. I would have to make guesses, and I don't think that's helpful for anybody. So that's a good question, though. I think it's certainly an interesting thing as well. All right. Good friend here says, I'm late. Did the coup attempt fail, succeed, still ongoing? As we're sitting here, it looks very clearly like it failed. But as we noted, a lot of wrinkles for sure. Since Maria says, what a shit show CIA at it yet again. I don't know. I mean, I think that I understand. I know I'm going to annoy a lot of people with this take here. I understand where these kind of feelings come from, and I don't think that it is incorrect to immediately ask yourself things like that, as we've seen plenty of examples in recent years, particularly with Lula's case. The FBI involvement with that. But I also think it's important to remember the full extent of actors involved. While you might have certainly a lot of like American influence, or at least kind of American wink and a nod, let it go kind of thing. Don't forget the bourgeoisie and the ruling class is an international class that certainly wants to see certain governments out of power. And sometimes I find that a over fixation on three-letter agencies, while you're going to be right a lot more than you're wrong, sometimes makes our analysis a little dull when we need to be really sharp. But I certainly get where that kind of thing comes from. Same thing with the lithium too. The lithium is certainly important, but one lithium is not the same as oil, and its kind of scarcity. Um, And while no doubt about it that coups and governments have been toppled for less, we also have to sort of recognize the multifaceted and multiple threats that these kind of governments might sort of pose to capital, because it's not all just like, oh, we want to own your shit. Certainly, a lot of people do, but are those the kind of forces that have the capacity and the influence to be able to, for example, convince the American state to support them in some kind of adventurism? Those are different kind of questions, and we just have to always be thinking about why those things happen instead of just, I don't know, boilerplate, saying, "Oh, I have a suspicion here." Kyle says, "I'm wondering if this will affect the upcoming Venezuelan elections." I mean, sure, we'll see some influence. Our good friend Byron Man 12 asked me something that I will say I don't know, but I'll read it. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer, but I really do appreciate the chat here. Who says, "I have you seen the day after plan in the Israeli cabinet talked about in Jewish Snyder? They actually think they can denazi quote denazi Gaza with more occupation. Why are our leaders such dumb racists?" I mean, we talked with Seamus on Left Reckoning yesterday, and it's truly something. The amount of delusion that is going on within the Israeli government right now is incredible, and I think that there's a part of it that comes from a lack of fear and a lack of accountability, um, right? And the fact that the people that they need to placate are the most rabid and fascistic reactionaries on the planet. Does it really create a context of rationality? The Mitan says, why didn't Bolivia get coups but Peru did? I mean, Bolivia's gotten lots of coups throughout their history and in recent memory. I mean, if you're saying recently, like the difference between what's happened, for example, with Pedro Castillo versus what we just saw happen in Bolivia today. I mean, I think one of the things that sort of separates Peru Libre from Mas is that Moss has just deeper roots in the social and workers movement in Bolivia, and it wasn't strong enough in 19 to stop what happened. People, not saying people didn't fight. Obviously, people lost their lives in that fight. But when they had the opportunity to take back power, they did, and they did with vengeance. And you saw the way people mobilized today. That's not something that you can cook up overnight. And Peru Libre always was a kind of fragmented organization, and I think in a different way. But yeah, I hope I understood the question there. Sen, Sensoria Maria says, "Thank you, David. Thank you for addressing my comment." I said, "I'm sorry if I'm being a killjoy. I really, it's not my intention." Greg says bourgeoisie equals CIA, dude, and I'll tell you right now that that's not true. There's a difference between the state and the ruling class, and I think Marxists throughout history have understood that distinction. It's an absolutely critical thing to understand. You know, Particularly, I mean, this is important. Really, it's really important to understand this. Is that like the state as it operates? What is its intention? Well, its intention is to maintain power, and its intention is to maintain an environment that is beneficial for capitalist relations of exploitation and extraction from the working class, and on the international sense for an empire like the United States, extraction as well. That's a very different mandate than the CEO of Coca Cola or a um, used car owner in Alabama. Those are different things. Now, Does the government oftentimes do things to benefit those different kinds of bourgeoisie, those different kinds of capitalists? Absolutely. But think about intercapitalist conflict, right? There's a big difference between internal domestic production, capitalists who are engaged in, American industry, versus car manufacturers who might want to import cheaper raw materials. Um, they're not particularly aligned. Right, they might be aligned on a question of like, oh, they don't want like a Bernie Sanders or socialist or something like that to come into power, but they're not aligned. The capitalist state is much more interested in maintaining the capitalist system, even if that means at times doing things like that will be extremely harmful for capitalists themselves, um, for certain segments of the capitalist class themselves, right? Because the state sort of operates with this long view, what will be good for the maintenance of this kind of system. So conflating the two is really, really dangerous, theoretically and politically, for socialists. They're not our friends, but it's not the same to say they equal each other, and it's a very, very dangerous thing to put out there. Just gonna just warn people before I go further. I am going to have to do a hard stop at 15. So, our good friend Marie says, "Nah, David, you make me think and smile. Will you make me smile too, friend?" Thank you. Dan says, "I wish you could open the channel. I'm a Latin American political analyst located in Costa Rica." Well, it's good to hear from you. Send us a message. Yeah, I'm sorry I can't like beam you in live. I wish I could make these shows a little easier if I could just someone to chat to. But yeah, hit us up, Dan. Love to hear from you. DeMighton says, "Yeah, I just don't get why some coups succeed and some don't. I guess it makes sense that if the people can come out for you and the control over the state apparatus helps stop a coup." Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it that Trump wanted to do a coup in the United States. He didn't have the capacity or the loyalty, for example, of like the military. You saw what he was able to do, which was throw a fit. Um, but he didn't have the capacity. I mean, that's a very kind of like if you live in the United States, that's something that you can sort of look to as an attempt like that. And what we just saw today, you know, there's a part of it that like possession is like a very important thing. If you control the state already, you have an advantage. The military is going to play usually a significant role, um, but you have to have at least a segment of popular support. Even if you control the military. Typically. All right, folks. Well, I think if that's it, that's it. Appreciate everybody coming in for this update. Very happy to be talking about some good news that there wasn't a coup. We'll be back this Sunday for patrons. You can sign up at patreon.com/left reckoning. Had a really great conversation with our friend Chip Gibbons. Chip Gibbons, Chip. They are the policy director at Defending Rights and Dissent. You'll also find their work in Jacobin. I mean, Chip has done incredible work in fighting for the freedom of Julian Assange, as the United States worked so hard to try to capture, imprison, and torture Assange. And Chip never, ever gave up and continued fighting through multiple different phases of the Free Assange movement, which we get into. We talk about that history of it because it went through very distinct phases. Kind of interesting to see some people give up on it, turn their backs on it. Some people come to it, some for good, some for maybe superficial. reasons. It was a really, really great conversation with Chip, who I always love speaking to. It was really great to sort of talk about the history, the importance of Julian Assange's freedom, and some of the lessons that Chip can sort of share with us about fighting for something that seems almost impossible for so long. So, folks, you won't want to miss that. That's up this Sunday for our patrons, patreon.com/left reckoning. Appreciate all of y'all so much. Always great chatting, and hope to see you soon.